You're listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground Podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Before we get to this week's guest, wow, what an incredible story. One of our few Korean War veterans, somebody who served in the Navy throughout the Korean War, also flew missions and worked with the Blue Angels, became a member of the famous Navy Blue Angels. We'll get to his story, just an incredible tale coming up here in just a moment. But first, again, our normal reminders, please continue to leave us Apple reviews and reviews wherever you get your podcast. Give us 5 stars, a thumbs up. Tell us why you love the show. We certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate seeing all the reviews that you guys leave and how much you love this program. So thank you all for that very, very much. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hazard Ground Podcast. Tell a friend to do the same. We appreciate the love there as well. Our promotion with Amazon continues on. Go to our website, hazardground.com. You click on the Amazon button at the bottom of the homepage. It will redirect you to Amazon. You can do all of your normal Amazon shopping. We get a percentage of what you guys spend. And then I'll donate a percentage of that back to some of the charities and organizations that have come up here on the show. So it's a great and easy way to help out veterans charities and VSOs and veteran service organizations just by doing Amazon shopping, but you got to go to hazardground.com first. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, give a thumbs up, smash that like button, and tell us why you love the content there as well. All right, this week's guest is 96 years young, joined the Navy at age 17 during World War II, served during the Korean War with an incredible story to tell, and was on patrol flying missions for 2 years, including one landing during a Category 4 hurricane. And a number of the missions that he conducted, some of them are still considered top secret. Also was a member of the U.S. Blue Angels, that Navy Demonstration Squad, and then finally got off active duty in 1951, went on to work for Lockheed Martin, and now continues to share his story in several different ways. He is Dick Stroud joining us here on the Hazard Ground Podcast. Dick, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
An incredible story. And just for the audience here's background, your son Mark is with you just in case we need his help along the way. So if you see him and you're watching on a YouTube channel, you see him pop in or you hear your third voice, it's Mark just kind of help guiding us through this whole thing. And I was telling your son before we started, I think you're only the second Korean War veteran we've had. It's been a very difficult thing to find service members from the Korean War, one, who are still alive, but two, you know, can remember it and share all the stories. So I certainly appreciate you you spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So why did you want to join the Navy at 17 years old, right smack in the middle of World War II?
Well, I was in high school when the war started, and they passed a law that on your 18th birthday, if you were physically able, you got drafted in the Army. But if you didn't want to go in the Army, if you wanted the Navy, Marines, or Air Force, you had to volunteer while you were 17. So as soon as I got out of high school, I was 17, and so I volunteered for the Navy.
Did you know that you wanted to be a pilot?
Yes. The reason I was back almost before airplanes, and the first time I ever saw an airplane, I was 15 years old, and we had a farm, and this Papa Cub J3 came and landed on it, and he taxied up to me, and he said, "You want to get in and go for a ride?" And I said, "I sure do," but it was the first airplane I'd ever seen. And so anyway, he took me up and flew around and explained to me all the controls and what they did. And then he told me, how he's going to land it. And so we came in and landed on this about 50-acre meadow. So, it wasn't like having to land on a runway. So he landed it, and he started getting out. And he said, "Okay, it's yours." so
Okay.
I was able to take off and fly around and try practice stalls and everything. And I came back in and landed okay. So I said, "Boy, this is for me."
So, like, you had gotten into the plane with like no formal training and just tried to fly it and land it?
Right.
Wow.
So that's the reason that when I joined the Navy, I told them I was interested in being an aviator, and so they gave me a whole bunch of tests, and I passed all of them real good, and they said, "Well, you did real good, but there was one problem. We don't have any quota for pilots now." But they said, "We do need some machine gunners for SB-2C hell divers." And they asked me if I'd like to try that. And I said, anything to be flying in the Navy. So they sent me to combat aircrew and school, and went through radar training, and I was number one in the class. I got promoted, and I went through radar school and was number one in the class. Got promoted again. Went through gunnery school, and I'd had an uncle who was a sharpshooter in World War One, and he had trained me how to shoot. So I was able to flip a dime up in the air and shoot a hole through it with either a pistol or a rifle. And so this kind of impressed the Navy trainers that trained me to be a gunner. And one of the final tests was to go on a skeet range, shoot at 300 clay pigeons, one at a time. I was the first one in the history of the Navy to hit all 300 of them. So they sent me on to Banana River, Florida, so I could train in the backseat of a SB-2C hell diver, and I got in the required training, and I was able to really would shoot at stowed targets in the air, and I could really reel them full of holes. So anyway, I got my combat aircraft wings, and so they headed me toward the Southwest Pacific, and I was just getting on a carrier when the World War II entered, and so I laughingly take credit for ending the Southwest Pacific War, because Emperor Hirohito knew that Texas sharpshooter was headed his way. He said, "I surrender."
So for clarification's sake, I just want to be clear that you wanted to be a pilot in the Navy, but they had told you they need gunners instead. So you were going to be a gunner instead of being a pilot.
Correct.
Okay. So it was the SBC-2. Is that what it was called?
SB-2C.
SB-2C. Okay. And what kind of aircraft was that?
That was a single engine airplane that was used on carriers.
Got it. Okay.
It's a dive bomber. just for diving and dropping bombs on the enemy.
Got it. Okay. So you went through all this training. Obviously, you're very good and very accurate, which is incredibly important. You get on the carrier by the end of World War II. What happens next?
Well, that's when the war ended. We were just leaving San Diego when the war ended, and that's laughingly said I take credit for ending World War II in the Pacific because Emperor Hirohito heard that sharpshooter Texan was on the way, and he said, "I give up."
Right. So after World War II is over, what's your next assignment?
Well, I was scheduled to be released back to inactive duty, but I checked with the right place to see if they had any quarter for pilots, and sure enough they did. So they looked at my scores. They said, "Well, all the scores are pretty good, so you can start flight training." But they had set up a program called the V5 program, and that program, they sent me to college for 2 years, and I went to the University of Texas. Then at the end of that, I was sent to Pensacola and went through flight training and won my wings and so yeah. Well, how far do you want me to go from there?
Okay, no, that's my fault, I suppose. No, but I appreciate you following along here. So when the Korean War kicks off, where are you? I mean, are you still in training? I mean, what status are you in?
Okay, well, I'll mention it. When I went through flight training, that there was the Jesse Lee Brown, the first black Naval Aviator, was going through flight training. So I knew him, and he got his wings one class before I did, and both of us got transferred to Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and Jesse and Tom Hudner, his wingman, they were assigned to the USS Leyte, the carrier, and I was assigned to the USS Cabot aircraft carrier. And we went through training for a year or two, and then Korea started in 1950. And so both carriers were scheduled to go to the Southwest Pacific. But at the last moment, the FBI contacted the Navy Department and said, "Hey, we have a big problem on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, that there's a 12-mile international zone up and down the coast that no other country can come inside without permission. But Russian submarines were coming in that zone and coming up to the land, letting spies off, coming back later and picking them up. So they selected my carrier, since we were anti-submarine, to stay on the East Coast. So we flew for 2 years up and down the East Coast from Cuba to Iceland, and anytime we caught a Russian submarine inside that 12-mile zone, we'd sink it.
I mean, so your job here is basically to find, seek, and destroy Russian submarines in an area in and around the east coast off Korea.
No, actually, off the coast of the United States.
Oh, off the coast of the United States. Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't even actually in Korea at any point in time ever, or no?
No, I was in the Atlantic Fleet the whole time of the 2 years of Korea.
Which is crazy because this type of mission, like, and some of it is still classified, but, it's insane to think that they were constantly trying to get spies into the country the entire time.
I didn't understand the question.
No, I didn't. I probably should have asked the question. That's on me again. But to me, did it ever seem crazy to you that Russia was continually trying to get spies into America during that time?
Yeah. Well, they were, and that's what we had 24 pilots on the carrier, and we had 18 airplanes, and half of the airplanes had a big radome under the belly of them, and they would use those for searching for the submarines. And the other one was a killer plane, which had bomb bays, and it could carry depth charges and torpedoes and mines and other things. And we had 10 5-inch rockets under the wings, and 10 50 caliber machine guns under the wings. So they were a perfect airplane to sink a submarine. So,
what's it like watching that round go from the plane down into the ocean? And can you see an explosion?
Well, it's the submarine. It's usually it'd still be underwater. I mean, all it'd be, we could see is a periscope. So we could destroy them, under the water, so that we could see a lot of commotion. But of course, I had the best license for flying on the instrument, so I only flew at night. So and also in the daytime, if the weather was too bad for the younger pilots to fly in, then I'd fly in their place. So I was either in complete darkness at night, or I was in bad weather in the daytime. So I hardly ever, could see the water.
Right. You had over 500 landings. One of them was during a Category 4 hurricane. You mentioned bad weather. That's bad weather. How do you land a plane in a hurricane?
With the help of my guardian angel. It was impossible. I couldn't even see the carrier. It was raining so hard. We just had a Category 4, headed for California, but it diminished and didn't hit land hard. But that night, the search plane I was with sent me off. He found a target. He sent me off to investigate it, because there's other things that cause a blip on the radar rather than a submarine. You could be somebody in a boat or an airplane or, or different things. So we'd have to investigate everything that, looks suspicious as a submarine. So I was, and we would stay up for 8 hours, and then we had another team that fly for 8 hours, and then another team for 8 hours to complete the day. So I was nearly 2,000 miles away from the carrier, and it was during wartime, so the carrier could not turn on any running lights because enemy submarines could, see them and sink them. So my first problem was to, find a carrier, but we also had radio silence. The carrier couldn't call me and tell me that they were in the middle of a hurricane, and I couldn't call them either. So when I headed back to the carrier, I was almost through before I started, hitting the bad weather, and then that's when my guardian angel really had to take over, because I was flying completely blind for the time, and the wind blowing 140 mile an hour, and the waves for the shipwreckers, the waves were 40-foot waves. So that air was pitching like a rubber ball, and it was going underwater. The flight deck was disappearing at times, and so I made 6 passes, and I got a wave off by the LSO because the deck wasn't level enough to get my wheels down and get my tail hook to catch a cable. So on the 7th pass, it was level, and it gave me a cut, and my tail hook caught, there were 9 cables. My tail hook caught the 9th cable.
Oh, wow. So, if you miss that cable, you just slide right off.
There were 17 other planes that were tied down with double steel tie downs on the front end of the carrier. So I couldn't, I had to land. Otherwise, I'd play on those planes and it'd be a terrible explosion. So,
yeah.
So when I stepped out of my plane, the admiral of the task force had a recliner up in the superstructure there watching flight operations. He was standing there getting soaking wet, and he stuck his hand out and he said, "Son, that's the most unbelievable flying I ever saw." He said, "I'd already kissed you goodbye." And I told him, I said, "Well, that was not me flying, sir. That was my guardian angel." And he said, I said, I told him that was my co-pilot. And he said, "Well, you didn't have a co-pilot. You was in a single engine plane." I said, "I certainly did, sir. My guardian angel was doing the flying of that." And so then there's, if you go to YouTube and select "good co-pilot," there's a song written by Steve Williams in Nashville about my landing on the carrier that night.
Oh, that's awesome. Again, so you can go to YouTube, and the name of the song is "Good Pilot."
Good co-pilot.
Good co-pilot. Sorry. Okay. And you'll get it there. That's incredible. What was the hardest part about that mission for 2 years that you did, trying to intercept Russian submarines? And I mean, for doing it for 2 years straight, did it ever get like boring is not the right word, but I mean, did you ever want to just do something different?
Well, that was most monotonous flying that you can imagine. You fly for 8 hours, and especially in the dark, and it's nothing but, even if there's a moon, if there's a moon or stars, you could see the surface, but if it didn't have those, I mean, it's like flying in a black ink bottle. You couldn't tell which way it was, up, down, or sideways. So I was flying the instruments 100% of the time.
I guess, that's a job that doesn't necessarily feels like it's ever complete. When did they tell you that you were done with this mission? As far as doing the flying up and down the East Coast to find the Russian subs. What did they tell you when it was over?
Well, it was over when after 2 years, the war was ceased, and the war itself was ceased, but there was something happened in the politics. It continued on paperwork, but anyway, after the fighting stopped, then our carrier was called back to other duty. So, but when during those 2 years, I was on 6 different carriers I'll read them off: the USS Cabot, the USS Palau, the USS Mindoro, the USS Siboney, the USS Wright, and the USS Oriskany. And they had enough fuel and food and everything to last for 4 months. So at the end of that 4 months, there'd be another carrier appear, and we'd take off the first one and land on the second one, fly off of it for 4 months, and then that's how we spent the 2 years with flying off of 6 different carriers.
That's incredible.
And the point that I didn't tell that the next morning after, of course, I got out of my plane and I got inside real quick, but the plane was rocking 45 degrees from side to side. And if it had gone 46 degrees, the carrier would have capsized and turned upside down and sank. So, boy, that's the first time I'd really gotten scared. And then the next morning at daylight, all 18 planes that were on the flight deck had been washed off.
18 planes washed off the flight deck.
Yeah.
Wow. What's that sight like when you walk out to go to your plane and they're all gone?
Well, of course, they told us that, as soon as it got daylight, they woke all of a sudden and said all the planes have been washed overboard. So
that's got to be a sight, like looking out into the ocean and just seeing planes floating. Well, I guess they didn't float that long, but
they didn't float; they sank.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably sank pretty quick, but anyway. So after this mission is over, you next get to the Blue Angels. Is that right? Like time wise?
But yeah, because I had made I'd made 500 night carrier takeoffs and landings, and about 2 in the daytime. but really a total of seven, a little over seven during the 2-year period, so that since and I made all of them without having a wreck. That was where my guardian angel came in at me too.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any barrier crashes, so that the Navy rewarded me by transferring me to the Navy Blue Angels, and their system then was that for the first year, all you do is fly through the pattern 4 times a day, and so you start out, you're about 6 or 8 feet apart, and by the time the years are with, you're down to 18 inches apart. But 5 months later, after I started with them, the Defense Department cut the budget of the Navy so that they had to cancel the Blue Angels. So as soon as that happened, I was released in active duty, and I was in the reserves for 10 years before I was finally retired from the Navy.
What's it like, I guess, after you do such a high-level mission, like what you were doing, searching for the Russian submarines, and then you go to a demonstration squad? I'm not trying to, belittle how tough the job of a Navy pilot for the Blue Angels is, but did it seem like, hey, I went from up here to down here? Did it feel like that sort of feeling because you weren't in a combat realm anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the Blue Angels I get from non-flyer. It looks dangerous, but when pilots get to that level, they're so perfect that there's no really. Actually, it's completely boring, really. What it is because it's not you're doing what you've been trained to do for years. So it's just like riding a bicycle. You can do it and not even think about it.
I guess the reward for the Blue Angel time was enough that you just get to be behind in the cockpit, and flying a plane, right? I mean, that's still the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
When they disbanded it, were you disappointed?
Oh yeah, grossly.
Well, I mean, I guess, did you think that you were going to? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Getting to fly the Blue Angels shows that's the highest goal that all Navy aviators have. And I thought I was going to get to flying some shows, but I went to work for Lockheed and as a aeronautical designer, and I ended up I was a supervisor for the 62 years that I have designed 20 Lockheed airplanes. And C-130 is we started on it in 1951, and they're still building them. We built over 2,700 of them, and we just got Lockheed just got a contract for $3 billion to build 50 more of them. So
how do you know how to build an airplane?
Yeah.
I mean, I can drive a car. That doesn't mean I know how to build one. So you flew a plane. How do you know how to build one?
Well, there's a lot of schooling. Went to the University of Texas, and then when I came to Marietta and got a job at Lockheed, I went to Georgia Tech for 2 years at night to learn everything I need to know about how to design an airplane.
So you cheated. You went to school. Okay. All right. I get it. By the way, when they, I just want to back up for a second. When they told you that the Blue Angels were being done, did it force you out of the Navy at that point in time, or you chose to leave?
Well, I was released inactive duty immediately. In August 20th of 1951, I was released, and so I got in the reserves, so I could, keep flying, and I stayed in them for 10 years. But back to the C-130, designing those over 2,700 airplanes, we designed 243 different versions of the C-130. They're, the outside structure of it, stayed the same, but, every customer, we sold it to customers all over the world, and they still sell them, but each one of them, wants something different, different radio or different color or, all kind of different things. So we would have to set a new number to it so we could track it in the computers. So,
how many planes would you say you took part in building over the course of your, 50 years at Lockheed?
62 years and 4 months.
Wow. Jesus.
But
can you guesstimate how many planes you were responsible for building?
Well, I was involved in every one that they built at Marietta since 1952.
Wow.
So,
the crazy part is my headquarters is right next to that Lockheed Martin base right there. The Georgia National Guard headquarters are right there. They're right next door.
Yeah, Dobbins Air Force Base.
That's the one, sir. Yep, that is the one right there.
That's where we flew off of. That's where flew our planes off.
Was there any part of you as you were going through your time at Lockheed and other missions or things, combat conflicts over the years that you saw? Was there like a part of you that ever felt like, hey, I could still do this. Maybe I should get back in, whether it was the 60s in Vietnam or the late 50s, whatever it may be. Did you want to ever get back behind in the cockpit and start flying again?
Yes. I always felt, I was super trained and qualified then. So I think I could still do it. In fact, about a year ago, the Blue Angels put on a show down at Peachtree City down south of Atlanta. Uh, I, about a month before that, they had invited me down to Pensacola, where their headquarters is, and spent the day with them. Got to know all the new pilots and all the mechanics and everybody. And so when they put on that a show at Peachtree City, they asked me if I wanted to fly in their C-130 as co-pilot during the show.
Oh, wow.
So I'd been trying all that 62 years, trying to get a ride in something I'd helped design and never been able to get off the ground in one. And that was a fulfillment of my greatest dream when I got to take off in Pat Albert that day down at Peachtree City.
That is awesome. That's a great sort of circle of life, right? You know, I mean, after being a pilot and creating this plane, you finally got to go sit in the cockpit of one. And actually fly it for that matter. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. So you are currently the father of 4 children, 4 stepchildren, 41 grandchildren, 42 great-grandchildren, and 3 great-great-grandkids. It's a lot of youngins. How much do they know about your service?
How much what?
How much do they know about your time in the Navy and what you did?
Well, probably very little. I mean, the younger ones. It's you know, with as many grandchildren, and great grandchildren, when they get old enough to start having children, our population of my family is just going to explode.
Did any of your kids, grandkids, great-grandkids decide to go into the Navy or be a pilot?
Well, not yet, but I always had, that hope in the back of my head.
Right.
Someone, but
what was the most for you? What was the best part about your time at Lockheed? Was it the C-130, or was there something else? There's something else I mean, to stay with one company for 60 years is almost insanity, especially nowadays. Like, nobody would ever be in one spot for 62 years. People can't stay in one spot for 62 days. What was the best part about working for Lockheed?
Well, the best was started in 1965 when we got a contract to build the C-5A, which is the biggest transport plane that the United States has. And like I say, I was supervisor of I call it the check group. My group, well, there were 12 groups in an engineering division, and each group would only be responsible for certain items of the plane. One like landing gear, one like hydraulics, one avionics, and one electrical, and so on and so forth. But my group, we checked every drawing that all these 12 groups designed, and made sure that everything was correct and it would satisfy the requirement it was supposed to, and so forth. So that I had 126 engineers reporting to me in Marietta, and in London, England, and I had 176 scattered all over the United States and Canada that reported to me they were checkers at these different subcontract places. And plus that, they gave me, I was supervisor of 40 secretaries. And we had a total of 4,000 engineers, just engineers working on the C5 program. But it was a real successful airplane, and I was standing out there on the runway when it took off for the first time, and it was so big, it is an optical illusion. It looked like it wasn't even moving at all, hardly. I thought it was going to stall and crash. I'm calling it to get more power, but it was going, plenty fast to fly, and made a successful flight. But I'm real proud of my C5. It's a double decker that on the bottom deck you can park 6 Greyhound buses, and on the top deck you can put 250 troops. So that's I'm real proud of our C5.
I've been inside a C5 and a C-17, so I've gotten a chance to see the raw. I guess power is the right word. Just the ability of what they could do is amazing. I'm curious, what do you think has a bigger reach? Your actual family with all your great grandkids and everything else, or your Lockheed Martin family who you worked with for 62 years? I mean, there's a whole web of people that you've touched over the course of 80 years or so.
Yeah, well, Lockheed went out before, but during that period of designing and building the C5, we got up to 35,000 people in Marietta.
Wow!
So I've known a lot of people, and I'm getting ready to celebrate my 97th birthday, so I've outlived most of them, and it's sad that I don't have many old friends left to talk to.
Well, listen, I am so thankful that you sat down to talk with us again. 4 children, 4 stepchildren, 41 grandchildren, 42 great-grandchildren, 3 great-great-grandkids, a total of 10 plus years of service, as a naval aviator, including some of the most high-level missions that we ran in our United States government, and then of course everything that you did at Lockheed Martin to, further our American military. Like that's just incredible. You've spent your entire life associated with the military and making sure it's the best military out there, and that's just incredible to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I retired when I was 88, and also during that time, Lockheed loaned me to a Gulfstream aircraft factory, down in Savannah, and I helped design 2 Gulfstream airplanes that are flying today. So.
Wow. I mean, it's incredible. The story never ends. Well, look, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's great to talk to you. 90, almost 97 years young. Thank you so much for everything that you've done, not only for our country and your service, but our country and building some of the finest, pieces of machinery that we have today that keep our military strong. And it's an honor to get to talk to you. I'm wishing you nothing but the best of health and continued success going forward.
I'm 100%. My health is perfect. Doctors they can't believe everything. All my numbers are perfect. They've never seen that before in their life.
Well, we're Celebrate 100 together then.
Okay. Uh, one of my doctors said if he lives long enough, that he's going to bake me a cake on my 100th birthday.
Well, I'd love to be there for it. That's amazing. Listen, thank you to your family, to your kids who helped facilitate this interview for us. I certainly appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. And thank you so much for your time, sir. And thank you for being a great American.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad I'm still there to tell about it.
Richard Stroud, thank you for being part of that.
I love my country. I love that flag. And so glad to still be here.
Glad that you're with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, hosted by Mark Zinno. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at producer@hazardground.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.